which was captured. But you're going to be building another generator in 2 or 3 years. That hasn't been captured. That's going to change your power supply cost structure. When those cost structure items change, it's going to affect the cost of service. But that's why you want to move slow. Because as your costs change, it's going to affect the classes differently. You know, some increases in costs may more adversely impact general service customers than residential. I'll give you an example of that. Let's say that federal government puts in a carbon tax or cap and trade, which increases the power of power supply and increase the market price of power. Because general service uses energy differently, they're going to be more adversely affected by that than residential. You see what I mean? A cost of service study should only be done every 3 to 5 years. The financial plan, which is the most important, needs to be done every year, which you do. This just gives us the guidance each year in the rate setting process in which direction to move the rates. But believe me, you don't want to go from where you are to what these numbers say, because in 2 years we may be going the other way. Does that make sense? So you can go ahead. No, monthly customer charge. Now, I talked earlier about the monthly customer charge, and your numbers, you currently charge a residential $10.80. Our numbers, what you're going to see, that residential customer charge would be $23.61. Now, one of the things we're going to be asking you for is how much you'll allow us to increase it. Because we're not going to ask to go from the 1080 to 2361. There's going to be too many adverse impacts if we did that. But we will be asking for like maybe a $2 or $3 increase in that customer charge for the residential. Now, what that customer charge represents is when a customer has a meter installed on their home or their facilities, the utility had the cost to install the meter, repair the meter, replace the meter, read the meter, bill the meter, and the cost of the service drop. Those are all fixed costs that do not vary based on consumption. Even if that customer uses 0 kilowatt hours in a month, those costs still exist. All right. There's also, as part of the study, a small portion of the distribution infrastructure. And what that represents is you have a substation, okay? And we want to know how much it costs to get that wire to handle the very bare minimum amount of load to every customer. Just the cost to run that little wire from that substation to the home. All right. That amount also gets put into that customer charge. Obviously, though, customers don't just use 1 kilowatt hour. They use more than that. So that's causing the system to be bigger than that little wire that we're trying to quantify in cost. That additional sizing above that gets put into the usage component, like the energy charge, because that drives that cost of that portion of the infrastructure. You know, I'm often told, not even asked, but told by economists, and I am sort of an economist myself, but that all costs are variable in the long run. And so there shouldn't be a monthly customer charge. And in many respects, that's a correct statement, but not for the electric utility, not for water utilities, not for wastewater utilities. Because when that home, to have electric to your home, you have to have that meter. That meter requires cost. So that portion of it, all costs are not variable in the long run unless the customer disconnected from service. In which case, now you're stuck with stranded cost. You know, if you don't recover in the monthly customer charge, you'll be left at the end. So, but this is one of the biggest issues in our country. I'm trying to remember the statistics. I think of the 52 states, something like 35 of them have allowed the investor-owned utilities to increase the residential customer charges substantially, actually, in most of the states. And it's because, we've been very effective with our energy efficiency programs, which is great. That's what we want to do. We want people to use our product more efficiently and lower carbon and be good for the environment. But at the same time, we still have to recover our costs, because if we don't, the infrastructure is going to suffer. We're not going to be able to provide reliable service, or other customers will be paying the bill for the ones that like install rooftop solar. If you see what the industry is faced with, and we're stuck with a rate structure, not stuck with them. We have a rate structure that's been around for 100 years. And which for residential is a customer charge and a per kilowatt hour rate. And the most inaccurate way of recovering our costs, believe it or not, is on a per kilowatt hour basis. Because we don't size our distribution system to handle kilowatt hours. Ask any distribution engineer. We size it to handle the peak demands, not the number of kilowatt hours. So, but we're stuck with this rate structure that doesn't have a demand charge right now for residential. So we're limited in our ability to bill them accurately. The only thing we can do to improve it is to get the customer charge closer to where it should be. All right, does that make sense?
So does this kind of go along with the mentality of folks have often said for the energy efficiency, why are we trying to encourage people to decrease the use of our product? And I've often said, well, our product's not electricity, our product is the service.
Correct.
That what we're basically providing is access to electricity.
Yep.
And not the electricity itself. We provide that, but the key thing is we're allowing people to use the electricity that's out there on the grid, and we're just providing the means for them to get it.
That's correct.
And it's not unlike, I guess, internet providers that usually just charge you a monthly rate and a high limit of data that you usually aren't going to go over.
Yeah.
So it's...
You're right. It's the same
They
concept.
recognize that model, and they can kind of in that point too.
There's you bring up a really good point. Most public power systems around the country, I'd probably say 75% of them, have very little investment in generation. They may have power supply contracts. You have some entitlements in Bell River, I think Campbell also, and you have your generating units here. And then you purchase the excess from the market. So if customers implement energy efficiency programs, you still have those costs related to that infrastructure here in Bell River and Campbell, but you reduce your market purchases. So the power supply costs, in a sense, kind of go away. But you still got the distribution cost, and that's what you're referring to. We still get that pipe that we need to recover that cost for. And that's what that monthly customer charge helps us to recover. Not all of it, but a higher percentage of it through that fixed charge. And what utilities have noticed is by increasing the customer charge, of course it makes sense too, but it's actually noticeable over time, is it stabilizes your revenues also. So you don't have as much fluctuations. Because really, if you think about it, in a year that it's a really hot, dry summer, and you sell a lot of electricity, because your customer charge is low, you're recovering it through the energy component, you're overcharging customers. Then in years where it's cool and wet, in the summer you don't sell a lot of electricity, now you're undercharging customers. You follow me on it? So, because if you don't recover it in the customer charge, it's going to be rolled into energy. If they use a lot of energy, more than usual, now they're paying more than they should.
I guess to me it makes more sense. I mean, I like the fact of having a higher customer charge. I mean, just in proportion to the, I don't know what the hell is part of it, the rate charge, I guess. But the other part being that then if you continue to push, as a utility, if we continue to kind of drive efficiency, we're doing so not to reduce our revenue, but we're doing so to reduce our overhead, basically.
Correct.
Because really providing electricity is overhead for us. That's extra stuff we have to, manage and provide. It requires, bigger wire transformers, what have you, to provide that. So,
Yeah, if your
Correct.
fixed charge is priced appropriately, then it's really not a concern.
yeah.
But it's shifting
Correct.
there when it hasn't been done that way in the industry.
Yeah.
Yep. And plus, I would think as a customer, to an extent, you'd like say, I'm going to pay. I don't have to worry about how many minutes I've got a certain light on. I mean, you don't want to just leave things running all the time, but you don't like the feeling that having one light on is just like money rolling out the door. It's
Right.
It's like, hey, I've already paid for most of this already. 80% of my bill I've already paid for anyway, just by plugging in, and then the major stuff I can work on. If they have some free fridges, they can get rid of a couple, but,
Yeah.
things like that. So yeah, that's how I see that.
Yeah. Now, one of the things with that customer charges is misconception in the industry that the belief that by increasing the customer charge, you're going to adversely impact low-income customers. And I'm not going to say that what I'm going to say next is 100% true, but it's mostly true. Low-income customers are not low-use customers. They're high-use customers. They live in older homes. They don't have the proper insulation, windows. They don't have the good air conditioners. They don't purchase energy-efficient appliances, LED light bulbs. So they tend to be higher than average electric consumers. Now, that's not true if your demographics are that low-income are in newer housing apartments. Then they are going to be lower. But in generally speaking, every time we've checked it out, low-income customers have been higher than average electric consumers. So believe it or not, by increasing the customer charge, you're actually benefiting low-income customers. You are impacting low-use customers. I'm not going to deny that. But low-income customers, not necessarily. So you can go ahead. So, slide number 20. I only have a couple more slides. I know I probably bored you long enough here. I think I run out of time, but
Killing me, Martin.
I know, he has to
1
get to
a.m.
Italy.
Right.
The monthly customer charge, and this is the question, it should be 1080, and you're at 1080 with the customer charge. Cost of service study says it should be 2361. And what we're asking the board is, would you consider, as part of the overall rate adjustment, a $3 increase in the residential customer charge? I'm not going to ask you that right this minute. I want to get to the very last slide before so you can see the impacts. Because we actually did a hypothetical, okay?
Perry's already there.
You're cheating.
He was there way long ago.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I know that I'm getting short of time, and I've covered a lot.
Take your time.
No.
You're good.
You're good.
Well, actually, why don't we go to slide 22?
Or you can do 21.
Well,
without the change.
Yeah, 21 is without the rate change. What the financials would look like without any rate changes. And first I'm going to start with the debt coverage ratio, which is the third column from the left. And you can see even without any rate changes, that one's not a problem. The minimum coverage is 1.35. Forget about that target. That's not an issue. The second target I want to talk about is the two columns on the right-hand side, which is your projected cash balance compared to the recommended minimum. And in 2018, you can see you're about $300,000 below the minimum. Not a big number. But over time, you can see that it grows. And in 2022, your cash reserves are projected about $1.3 million. And at that point, you're almost $2 million below your minimum. So you can see over time, it's going to become a problem. The target operating income, you're a little bit below, not anything I'm excessively concerned with, but your target operating income you see in 2018 is $580,000. Adjusted operating income is, we're calculating, is $421, and over time, the target goes up to $764,000 in 2022, and your adjusted operating income is $281,000, comes down a little bit. So we're below that target, but most of our recommendations, honestly, are being driven by that cash reserve number. So if you go to the next slide. And there was a balance that we needed here, because if you look on the two right-hand columns with the cash reserves, each year we're just slightly below the minimum, okay, but we're really for the most part there. The reason I didn't go higher, our recommended increase is 1.45. The reason I'm not wanting to go higher than that is because if you look at the operating income, the operating income in 2018, we're a little bit below the target, but over time you can see we're actually above our targeted operating income. So I get a little bit uncomfortable, so I really kept the increases and really drove the increases looking at the cash reserves. Does that make sense?
And again, this increase would take effect at the same time we drop the PCA to 1.7. Does that make sense? So it's still a net anyway, I just want
Yeah.
the board to be clear on that, because we'll have caught up from our deficit that we had for 2 years in the next couple months, and we would drop the PCA anyway. So that's why Mark used the assumption that our PCA would be lower. If we did nothing, we'd be at this point.
Yeah. So slide number 23, this is what the next steps, in a sense, is a recommended approval for a 1.45% rate increase, a plus or minus 1% bandwidth, which would mean that the largest increase would be 2.45%, the smallest would be 0.45. To move the classes obviously a little closer to cost of service, and to focus on adjusting that customer charge. And the first year would be a $3 increase in the customer charge is what we're hoping the board would consider. And of course, that would result in a reduction in the energy cost. If you go to the very last slide. Oh, you don't have it up there?
You just can go left. Or you can just exit and just...
Oh, there we go. This is what I mean by we're asking for a rate increase, but costs are going to go down, is because the residential, this is our hypothetical rate design, where we increase the customer charge from 1080 to 1380. The energy rate went down slightly, even though we're increasing rates. The energy rate went down because we're recovering $3 in the customer charge, from 7.86 cents down to 7.676. And then what's really driving the rate decrease is the last two numbers, which is the energy power cost adjustment, which is currently at 2.39 cents per kilowatt hour. That would be going down to 1.7 cents per kilowatt hour. So overall, residential customers would see a 3.1% rate reduction, even though we're increasing the rates. And because
Go ahead.
it's because we're increasing the base rates by the 2.45, but then the energy cost adjustment mechanism is decreasing, causing the overall rates to decline by 3.1%. On the right-hand side is the impacts on a customer's monthly bill depending on the usage level. So at 250 kilowatt hours, they'd actually see an 82 cent per month increase. But anything above that would see a rate decrease. So, like, for example, 850 kilowatt hours, about $4.40 a month decrease.
So, yes, I understand what you're saying. Different terminology, I guess. I mean, because there is a rate increase. Bottom line is, and you had mentioned that they're going to actually have a rate decrease. They're having a rate increase, but they're going to pay less because of the PCA.
Correct.
And I just want the public to know, because we keep on talking about a rate increase, but they're going to see a rate decrease. They're actually technically seeing a rate increase, but they will actually be paying less because of the PCA going down.
Correct, that's the correct way to put it, absolutely.
Yeah, but-
So what-
Because the PCA, right, you know, we were in a deficit for so long. We're gonna be out of that deficit, and we can't just keep the PCA at 2.39 to cover all these other increased costs of capital and labor and inflation, because you can't pass on power costs to collect for this other stuff. So we're gonna have, I mean, once we catch up, which we will be here in the next couple months, that'll go down to 1.7 cents, break even. And then considering at the 1.7 cents, then we need the 1.45.
Yeah.
So what is the PCA based on? Is it tied to cost of power?
Yes. I have a huge elaborate spreadsheet that we look at total kilowatt hours sold. We multiplied that by our base rate of 4.32 cents. We add how much we collected for renewable energy, EO, PCA, and compare that to all the costs that we've experienced in power for transmission, capacity, energy, renewables. And if we are over or under collecting, then I adjust the PCA accordingly. Does
So
that make
then-
sense? And for years, we were a couple $1 million behind, even with large PCA increases because of coal, all the additional debt that we issued for Campbell and Bell River. And I did a presentation about that at the city council meeting because there's a lot of concern in this town about the major increases in our PCA costs. It just so happens we're going to be doing these at the same time.
Yeah.
But if our PCA right now was 1.7 cents, then it would be a 1.45%
Yeah.
increase. But we're going to do it at the same time, so the customers will still see a net decrease.
So are
Did I
we,
say that right, Mark?
Yes.
so are we expecting the PCA to go down the next 2 years based on the cost of power going down and then start kind of going back up again? Based on that earlier chart that showed what was that one page?
Yeah, it's
Wherever
up on the
seven-
assumptions.
Yeah.
It would be, I'll get
Well,
you
and
some-
actually, when we say the PCA is going to 1.7 cents, Mark, technically, when we finally do the rate, we build some of that back in, correct, in the energy component.
Okay.
Is that, would your be your recommendation or not?
Well, yes, if I would be, what we'll probably be doing, we kept it to what you're doing now, because this is irrelevant from the standpoint of the rate increase. But what we want to do is right now, I'll look at the model because it's in there. The way your power supply cost recovery mechanism works is you have theoretically buried in your base rates 4.32 cents per kilowatt hour for power supply cost. When the power supply costs are above 4.32 cents, that gets passed on to customers. So this year, is probably projecting around 6.5 cents. So you got 2.2 cents or 2.7 cents, whatever. That's passed through to customers. Next year, it's projected to be 6 cents. So what's passed through is 1.7. Now, what we like to do is to periodically true up that base charge. In other words, zero it out. So 1.7, whenever a power cost adjustment gets over a penny per kilowatt hour, it should be trued up and put back in the base rates. Because there's inequities that's created because power supply costs consist of two components, demand related or capacity and energy. But it's all billed to customers on energy. So it creates inequities, especially for your industrial customers. That's why you're seeing that negative rate reduction for your high load factor. It's because of this. So what we want to do is to true it up, to say, take 1.7 cents, put it back into the rate. So when you look at this slide, what's going to happen is that 1.7 cents is probably going to be closer to zero. I don't want to say we're going to go right to zero, but it's going to be something closer to zero. And then we're going to take that 1.7 cents and we're going to increase the energy rates by that. So it's a net wash. Follow me?
So you're basically rebaselining.
Rebaselining,
basically.
correct. So then when Steve goes to recalculate it, instead of using a base of 4.32, he's going to use a base of 6.02 that's buried in the base rates. So now anything above the 6.02 would then be passed on to customers. And I'm,
Is the average homeowner around 850 per month kilowatts?
No,
I can get
I
you-
think that 629 might have been the last quarter, when it says 629.
Okay.
So they'd be, you know,
So essentially, they were saving about $3,
$3. And in the summer months, you might see them closer to the 800.
but then we're gonna raise the monthly charge by $3, so it's pretty much gonna be a wash.
Well, no,
isn't it?
this reflects the $3 monthly
Oh, that
charge.
does, okay.
Yeah, this is an all-in,
Okay.
correct, Mark?
correct.
So that's with the
Okay.
$3 raise. They still
Yeah.
see the reduction
Because it
because,
seems
Yeah.
like we're gonna increase your rates, but you're gonna be paying less because we're gonna reduce the PCA, so.
correct.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
So it
overall
kinda
a
goes-
good deal. We
Yeah,
just
yeah,
want to make sure
definitely.
it's publicized correct.
and
Yeah.
when you look at page,
Tim, you hear that?
when you look at page 21, but when you look at page 21, that's a scenario we don't wanna see because
Right.
we're gonna go down the drain
Right,
unless
because we're
unless
gonna-
we make these changes.
We have to lower the PCA because it would be unethical to keep collecting
Yeah, but the projected
money
cash
through
balance,
energy for other expenses.
the projected cash balances on page 21, that's scary stuff. So we need to raise our rates, and we need to capture some of what we're losing in the residential area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah,
So-
600, oh, sorry.
So the fact that it's kind of washing out a bit is due to the fact that energy costs are kind of going down for the first couple of years, and if they go back up a little bit, the PCA is going to trend down, then trend back up, or at some point get rebaselined in there, but the net effect will be there that in a sense, we're taking advantage of low power costs now to be able to raise the rate and get it back onto a rate schedule that makes more sense without having a huge sudden impact because we've got the benefit of costs going down so we can readjust the PCA. And
Yeah,
so in
what
a few
happens
years
that-
from now, the PCA is going to creep up a little bit, but
Right,
it's not going to be a huge thing.
right.
The average customer is gonna hear the rates are going up, and we have to sell. Do you guys have a plan for that?
No, we don't yet, and we still have a couple months before, you know, this will be going into effect in like July or
Yeah.
August. Or when Mark actually recommends, do you recommend fall?
I typically recommend an October 1 implementation. I mean, it's not critical that you do it immediately.
Okay.
And the reason for that is it sounds, you don't necessarily want to increase rates on July 1 because
Yeah.
customers' usage is high. And October, their usage falls off, so the increase is kind of moderated. It's still there, but yeah. You know, and that table on the right-hand side actually, I think, tells your story pretty well. And of course, something like that will be generated. And I think you have a newspaper reporter here.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can publish that right over on the.
So, so in 22, slide 22 or whatever, so in 2018, a 1.45 projected rate adjustment. So then is 219 the same, each year is an additional
Yeah.
Yeah.
1.45. So again, if you're looking at it over the 5 years, we're increasing it, do the math,
7.3-ish.
Yeah, 7.35
in 5
or
years.
25.
Okay.
Well, really, this is the way it should be, is that we shouldn't really be having years and years of no rate adjustment.
Well, I'm just,
Yeah.
How long have we gone without a rate adjustment?
We have not moved anything since December of 14.
Yeah, so
and this,
I kind of see it as we almost should have a policy of we should expect to raise rates 1% or some percent every year because that's what the cost of.
Yeah, as long as the cost of service dictates that.
Yeah, and then we would adjust it every year depending on how things actually turned out, you know, and
Well, that's the importance of, we had developed a policy of having a cost of service study done every so many years so you can make these informed decisions.
because that's what at first I thought you meant by the bandwidth part at the end, because on the slide, I kind of thought that was a neat approach if we said that our nominal rate increase would be 1.45. Some years we may have to move it up to 1%, and other years less than that.
Oh, I see.
But I think you're actually referring to
The rates,
how you
classes.
how you apply the rates to different classes.
Correct. That's correct. So,
But I could kind of see something like that as a policy of you know, we're gonna plan to increase rates every year by X% because costs always go up. But depending on how the energy costs are and infrastructure or whatever our system is, that we may adjust that rate change,
Yes.
you know, as needed to make sure we have a good, you know, projection of financial projection.
Yeah, and of course with the power cost adjustment, 1.45% annual, which I'm probably fairly confident the next 3 years it's going to be pretty close. See, you know, with the power cost adjustment, like right now, customers are actually going to see a decrease. Other years, if power costs are on the rise, 1.45%, customers are going to see more than that. Right now, to be honest, it's a perfect time to have a rate adjustment because customers' charges are actually going down, even though we're increasing rates, so.
And so the board sets the rates, and we have to then
Post them with the
post
city.
that with the Sioux Ellery at the city, and then 30 days
30
later.
days they go into effect. So, yeah, there's no approval by the council or
Right.
vote or anything, but again, we wouldn't be looking to do it 30 days from now. We would make sure to market this and do it at the right time.
Okay.
Is this for commercial too, the same rate adjustment?
That slide is only, the last slide is only the residential that we showed, but we will be doing the small general service too. And their rate is probably, because I think they were a 3% adjustment, so they're probably going to see something less than 1.45. So even, you see the rate decrease to 3.1 for residential, it's probably going to be bigger for them.
So I guess up on slide 17, the actual cost of service, that's based on everything that we provide or just everything minus the actual power? Because like the next slide talks about the monthly charge.
Cost of services, operating, maintenance, hard purchase power, everything.
So it's everything.
They look at our budget,
Okay.
and they actually develop a budget off of our financials every year. And actually, Mike and I got within $1,000
Okay.
on an $8 million
Right.
budget. So, yeah, it's all in. And then they attribute those costs of customer service to different industrial or commercial or residential. He has incredible models and spreadsheets behind the scenes to put up just a few slides.
Okay.
So, to move forward, so you're looking just for us to gather this information, process it, and you're looking probably in June or July to come back with a rate.
Rate design. Yeah. What I'm looking
You wouldn't be
for,
approving,
not tonight, no.
you wouldn't be approving in your recommendation, then you would come back and design the rates? or-
Well, it depends on how you actually do it. This is how I normally do it,
Okay.
but I think sometimes you just do a vote. But if you go to slide number, I almost prefer sometimes to keep it more informal. Slide number 23. I guess in a sense, there's 3 questions to the board that I'm looking for direction. And sometimes, actually, when I've done here before, it was approved. But normally, I'm just looking for direction, not of heads. 1, do you agree with the 1.45% rate adjustment? Are you comfortable with our recommended rate track? Is the first question. So that we can go back and actually design the rates, because that's our next step, is to get this direction.
Okay, so this is a process that we're going
Correct.
through. This is not necessarily, you're looking for us to go a consensus of, yeah, we're good with this. I mean, Mark, you've done it for us before and everything, and kept us on the right path to be a viable utility. So I'm looking for your recommendations, and if this is what you're recommending, then I'm good with that. And then I'm speaking for myself, not for the whole board, but then to move forward. So then if we said, oh yeah, we're good with this, then you'd come back with here's what it would be for commercial, and here's what it would be for the 4 or 5 different ratepayers and
Yes, that's what we'd be doing. That'd be the next step. So if you looked at slide 23 and you said, yeah, everything looks great, I'm out of here, and we'll design rates, and they'll be at your next board meeting. If you say, I think 1.45 should be 3%, okay, well, we can do that too. If you say no increase, we can do that for a year. But, you know, I'm trying to be funny, and I'm not doing a good job of
what, so you work with these numbers every day, Steve and Julie, what,
Yeah, let me go back. I would go with slide 23 to let Mark design rates with the recommendation of the 1.45% increase for the bandwidth and
Yeah,
let him
1%.
do his thing. And recognizing this is also at the same time going to still result in a decrease in the majority of people's per kilowatt hour charge. So I think this is the time to do it.
And at the same time, it preserves and protects the light and power entity for the
Right.
citizens of Lowell.
Right. So that's my recommendation.
So I guess a couple questions. I guess one of them was, so on the one slide you showed how with the rate increase, it showed that we were still slightly below the reserve, right? The
cash reserve?
Cash reserve.
Just slightly below it.
Is there a reason to not target getting up to it at a certain point?
I mean, every year we're like $100,000 to $200,000 below it, so I wasn't real concerned about it. So that's why I didn't want to push it to. Sometimes there's mental barriers too. 1.45 sounds better than 1.5, I guess, and we're just so close that.
And I guess that's what I was wondering is how close it is to get to above that.
I'll tell you that in a moment.
Because as much as I'd like to keep the increase down or, minor, on the other hand, I don't want to be perpetually below the recommended reserve.
Okay, if we did 1.5, again, we're a little bit below the first 4 years and exceeding at the 5th year. If we did 1.6, again, we're still just slightly below it the first 4 years. If you really wanted to eliminate it, we'd really have to go up to 2%. And my concern is that by doing that, our adjusted operating income goes way above our targeted operating
Yeah.
income. And that was the other side of the balance that we're trying to do. That's kind of why we settled at the 145, because we were just so close on the cash.
Yeah, okay.
So,
And then what's driving the cash reserves from being so high is the fact that we've got a 5-year capital improvement plan of $5 million or.
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's what's kind of driving, we're kind of using the cash reserve as we get it right now because of this 5-year infrastructure.
And I'll be honest with you, and sorry, Steve, and everybody here, but capital improvement programs tend to be a bit of a wish list. And
We make them happen here.
yeah. Normally, anyway, and they even tend to be front-loaded, and usually if I see a capital plan, it's usually going to be less than that. So by looking at your cash balances and being that much below it, I'm really not concerned.
So that's what makes our cash reserve being a little below is the fact that the income that is going to be high, or not high but strong, and while we're doing this infrastructure upgrade, so that's what keeps us in a strong position. Because once that upgrade or whatever is done, if we don't have such a high capital expenditure in a few years, then our reserves are going to go up quite quickly.
That's right. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Okay.
Because once the capital improvement program comes down, then your cash is going to start skyrocketing upward,
So a
especially
10-year
with the
projection would
operating.
look a lot different than a 5-year one in this case.
If we lowered our capital improvement plan to $900,000 a year,
Then you're
I mean,
more
we're
above,
taking
yeah.
$100,000 to $200,000 of additional cash, so we'd be up
Yep.
$1 million
Yeah.
over the course of 5 years, and we'd be $900,000 over.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay, so just because if we're kind of more or less consenting to a plan that says, hey, we're gonna be just under our recommended minimum. Normally, I don't like being there, but in this case, it sounds like it's a pretty safe
I think,
place to
We've
be.
been far worse in cash a couple
Oh,
years
yeah,
ago
but
that Julie
still.
and I had to sweat out, so.
If we're trying to be a premier utility, maybe we should be above everything, right?
Right.
But it sounds like that's a very strong place to be just because of other factors. And the other comment I wanted to bring up was, so that the average customer bill is $80 or $81 according to our report, and they only spend 10 of that right now on, or 11 of that on the,
The rest is renewables,
So-
energy efficiency, and their energy charge.
okay.
Yep.
So that shows that they're only paying like, what, 12, 13%?
Yeah,
Of the
10 out of
base
8
rate,
is
more or less.
12.5%, yeah.
Yeah, the average cut base rate's like only 12.5%.
And if you really
That
think
seems
about it,
really
if you
low.
look at like a Verizon, sometimes they have a line access charge is $40.
Yeah.
You know, so like even cell phone,
Well, even think-
just to have cell phone service, if you use 0 minutes or data, you might have $40 to have that cell phone. And we're saying you can run your whole house on $10.
Yeah.
You know, just to have the ability to. I mean, that's unbelievable to me.
Okay,
Anyway, that, we could.
anything else?
Like, I guess why would we limit that change to $3? Is it just because it's too much of an impact on,
low users.
okay.
You see, that's the $3 increase, if you look at the 250, and you're going to have some there, especially seasonal customers, it's 82-cent increase. And we're saying we're giving a rate decrease, but there are some that are going to see increases. And, you know, I guess we're trying to balance that too. You know, and we're using our judgment, and it's really your judgment. I think what we're doing here is right, because it's really your judgment that matters, not ours. But it's, you know, I was kind of trying to limit that. And if we went from $10.88 to $23, that 250 kilowatt hour user is going to see $10, $12 increase, even with the decrease in the energy rates. So,
And the PR.
yeah, the PR.
It's hard to control that.
Okay,
But I
I
guess
would,
that's something to consider going forward, or do we continue to try to move that to something that's a little more sustainable, I guess, or a little more representative of how we operate?
Yeah, and I think in there he has moved towards cost of service, and the cost of service is the 23, so when
Yeah.
he does his rate design for the next 5 years, it might show 1380, then 1530.
Oh, so this is just
He's
year
gonna-
one, you're
That's just year
That's
one.
just
that's year one.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's. yeah.
So that's the one
I was
point.
thinking
You're
that was gonna
moving
be
it
the only,
slowly.
the only
Slowly.
change, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense then.
Maybe Andrew could pay more.
Yeah, we want
There you
to
go.
single you out, yeah, 23.
I don't know where my usage is actually.
So is everybody comfortable with our recommendated page? Recommendations
I
page?
mean, it's,
I mean,
Yes.
can
Definitely
we
like
still have
this
an
approach.
action item to adopt his recommendation? Or no? Or do you want to
I
just do
think usually it's
consensus?
by
I just consensus.
Okay.
And I'm gonna thank you and kick you out of here because we got some
Yeah, I
other,
know.
our budget and everything for the following year. And so,
Thanks for coming, Mark.
Thanks for
Well,
coming and-
Thank you very much for
And
having me. You have a great
consensus
time in
is-
Italy.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll do
Yeah,
it.
I'm going to the Amalfi Coast.
We are.
Yeah, it's a great time.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
In 48 hours, I might, hopefully we'll be there.
Yeah. You have a great
If
time.
we're-
Thank you.
We're not in the meeting, but thanks,
one
Mark.
quick,
Really appreciate it.
when would you anticipate coming back? June,
Well-
July with the,
I would probably say realistically July, only because, you know, Steve, I want him to make sure he has
Yep.
adequate time to review. it.
okay, yep,
So,
all right, thank you.
thanks.
well, thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Let's move
Yeah, definitely
on.
for that.
Item B, Steve, under 6B, benefit renewals.
Yes, second action item is benefit renewals. Every year in May, we review and approve the next fiscal year's dental and health benefits. And the last couple of years, we were fortunate in our healthcare benefits that we didn't have substantial increases, unlike a lot of people. I think we had under 5% actually for the last couple of years. So we had mixed reviews. The good news is that our dental plan is still competitive. I do make sure that our agent looks at other plans in the marketplace. And for the first time since I've been at Light and Power, we do not have an increase in our dental plan. So really not much to discuss there. We are on the Priority Health HMO 500 plan, and that plan is able to offer all of the same deductibles, prescriptions, co-pays, ambulance, ER, doctor's visits, chiropractor, all those costs are the same, except the out-of-pocket limit increases from $5,000, $10,000 to $7,150, $14,300, and this is due to the ACA. There's no control that Light and Power has for this out-of-pocket max limit increase, and it actually has increased significantly for the second straight year. With that being said, there is a new co-insurance out-of-pocket maximum of $3,500 to $7,000 that you see is less than the $5,000, $10,000 we had last year. So any health insurance expense that applies to a co-insurance charge, people actually hit an out-of-pocket max that's less than what we had, which is good news. The only time the $7,150, $14,300 would apply is if there's a injury or a catastrophic event that doesn't apply to a co-insurance. So it's kind of a catch-22. Hey, there's good news and there's bad news. So unless there would be something tragic, that second out-of-pocket max is actually a good thing. The increase is 11.44%. This results in an average increase of $10.56 to an employee. The most affected employee sees $39.69 increase a month. The least affected is $2.46. It does result in just over an $11,000 increase to Light and Power to provide this health insurance benefit. We did look at where Lowell Light and Power would be compared to the Public Act 152 hard cap. As you may know, the government says how much can Lowell Light and Power spend on employees' health insurance. And we made the calculation, we'd be $17,000 underneath the hard cap. If we were to go over the hard cap, all employees' premiums will go from 10 to 20%. So basically double. Is everybody on the same page so far? We did look at Priority Health's next best plan that has an out-of-pocket max much more similar to what we're currently experiencing today. The problem with that plan is that it's a 27% increase to Lowell Light and Power. So instead of the $11,000 increase, we'd see close to $27,000, $28,000. And we would actually be, I think, with our new hire, over the hard cap, which would mean everybody's insurance, if I pay, if Julie paid $1,000 out of her pocket a year, her cost would go up to $2,000. We looked at the HMO 1000, that would double the deductible, and it would actually only offer a $4,400 savings compared to our current renewal. We looked at some PPOs, but for the second consecutive year, there's really not a benefit as all employees here are in network. We looked at HSAs, and those really don't have the cost savings, and frankly, I don't think there would be employee buy-in. So it's my recommendation to renew the dental plan at a 0% increase and renew our current healthcare plan at an 11.44% increase, subject to collective bargaining. We did meet with them yesterday for the first time. I did provide all of this information to them, so they're aware. And it's pretty evident our hands are tied unless we wanted to do something drastic and go to Blue Cross. But again, that could be complicated. So you all know my recommendation, but if you have any questions, I take them now.
So the reason to not switch providers is just the hassle of everybody having to find different doctors. And
We had major pushback by the IBEW and different doctors. If we went to, I can't remember if it was Blue Cross Blue Shield or Blue Care Network.
Okay.
For a couple of the IBEW guys.
So I know where I work, they've switched providers a few times since I've been there, but, granted, we've got, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of employees, but, so we don't have a say individually what, but where that's one nice thing here is you can kind of ask all 30 people you've got and just know what they're doing.
Right.
So I guess it sounds like that's what it was, is just that the employees wouldn't want to have to deal with the switch necessarily. And the benefits wouldn't necessarily, number one, that's not guaranteed to be a better plan. Number two, if it is, it wouldn't be that much.
Right.
That sounds like what we're looking at.
Do you have any comments, Tina? I know you're in the industry. You're probably
This
more of
is-
an expert than anyone
This
carry by
is really
far.
spot on, to be honest with you. When I opened it up and I was looking at it, this is truly spot on for them. Going to the other carrier that you mentioned. Well, if you were a larger group, that's the difference. When you're dealing with BCN and, you know, the other Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, the larger the group, the greater the savings that you have. So unfortunately, you know, we don't have 1,000 employees that they could just pull them all in and everybody has a great party there. This is really spot on. I would move forward to okaying what you have laid out here in front of us here. So you're
So
right.
is that your motion?
That's my motion
Okay.
to move this forward. For
Go
this
ahead.
11.44%, this is a very reasonable and fair increase. So,
I feel better about it.
there you go.
So, motion's been made,
I'll second.
it's been moved and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. On to operating capital budget.
Okay, third action item is the fiscal year 2018 operating and capital budget. I'm sure you all remember that in February, we went through Lowell Light and Power's long-range projection plan. In March, we approved a draft budget, and that draft budget carries unless there's any modifications that need to be made to a potential final budget. So, just considering time and even the very slight changes that we did make to the draft budget that the board's already reviewed and approved, I'll just go over the changes that I talked about.
These are changes to the draft? Okay.
Yes, so the draft's already been approved
Yep.
and would be our budget unless we adopt this budget tonight. So the biggest and most important change is the $484,000 decrease in total sales and operating revenue. And I know you guys know the reason already after the presentation by Mark. This is really due to the cost of service study results and the fact that our PCA will be coming down, so our revenue is just going to be decreasing in the next fiscal year. So I've already taken that into account. And then if we didn't do anything with Mark, we'd probably go back to our previous budget, but I would hope that we adopt his rates, which we just did. There's a 0% change in expected purchase power expenses, the MPPA's models, and my knowledge of what's happening in here in Lowell. Nothing's changed on that front in the last 2 months, so there's really nothing to change. The generation department budget increases by $8,000. I budgeted additional money for an environmental consultant to review our air permit to make sure we're in compliance with all the requirements going forward. The distribution department shows a $29,000 increase compared to the draft budget, mainly due to expected wage increases that I had not budgeted in for the IBEW. Knowing 100% certainty that we'll have a new employee for the entire fiscal year, we weren't sure when he would get hired, if it would be 2 months in or if it would be before. We know for certainty he'll be here. And the hope and expectation that one of our employees, John Francis, will return to full-time duty. So that's the main reason for that increase. Employee benefits and other compensation show an increase of $35,000, and we did receive our healthcare renewal, so that's $11,000 of that $35,000, and pension and additional new employee cost increases, social security tax, pension costs, dental costs, or life insurance, short-term disability. The EO budget is increasing by $15,000 to increase the plan that we filed with the state of Michigan. Other departments in total vary slightly, but it's just really the fine-tuning of actually just sitting down, talking about what we need in the next fiscal year. The net income, mainly because of sales, is decreasing by $581,000, but still at a strong amount of $496,000. And if we go through the actual document, you will see that on the first page, you'll see operating sales, total sales revenue and operating revenue is decreased. The generation expenses are actually going down significantly, and a lot of that's due because we won't be leasing a compressor. In distribution, I would like to point out that we have some large increases in substation expenses, and that's because one of our projects as part of our 5-year plan is more maintenance, not something that can be capitalized. And really, when you get down to the bottom, total operating expenses, you'll see a 3.82% increase compared to how we expect to finish this year. When you take out depreciation, which is a non-cash operating expense, I show a total increase in operating expenses of 2.76%. So when you factor in inflation, we still have purchase power increases of $47,000. We're hiring a new employee. We're going to have another new employee hopefully back. I think 2.86% when you take out depreciation is very fair. And again, that gets us down to the $496,000 net income. I'm going to skip ahead to the capital budget. I take our net income, which is again the combination of operating revenues and operating expenses, as well as non-operating expenses. I take out our bond principal of $240,000. I add back depreciation and OPEB, and I show that we're going to have $1.016 million to spend in our capital fund, and that $1 million is unchanged from what was approved in March. How we divvied up that money did change. We're going to have a larger carryover to our 4160 to 12470 upgrades than I had thought previously. So we're actually going to have about $175,000 carryover. So that's why I decreased the budget to $215,000 to the 4160 to 12470. That allowed me to increase the CT budget. The South Broadway project, Dick Went has let me know that we can only contribute our time. We cannot buy any material for King Milling that will be owned by them. So I decreased that budget. We received final quotes for roofs for all facilities, and that reflects the $100,000 facilities upgrades and maintenance. We now know the size of the portable generator that we need because we received the horsepower of the new compressor. And I upped the standby generator price, I think from $47.5 or $50 to $60. And then I tweaked the capital equipment and office renovations with the remaining money I had left. So $1 million remains unchanged. It's just how I divvied up the money, but you would be only approving $1 million. Does that make sense? But I still want you to know where we're spending it and how that relates to our strategic plan. So I'll entertain any questions, but really not a lot of changes besides some personnel and the revenue that the board's already given their approval for.
So, I'm having a hard time understanding, sorry. So if we're the rates are increased and
Revenue's going down.
Revenue's going down. I mean,
Overall?
if we're going down $484,000 decrease in revenue, how does our cash on hand increase to stay? Because if we made no changes, I'm going back to his budget. If we made no changes, our cash on hand kept going like this, and what we needed, and all of a sudden now we've got $484,000 less revenue. How does our cash? How do we? Am I saying it wrong? Am I not? You know what I'm saying? I'm just looking
So
at, that's a huge number that's
His-
decreased.
His projections on revenue reflected our PCA going down to 1.7 cents.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
But our expenses will go down a similar amount because it's just the cost of power, right?
Well, we finally caught up on how much we were at deficit.
Right.
This could be a really,
But I think what
really
Perry's asking is,
cumbersome conversation.
why wouldn't our,
I mean, if our revenue is going down that much, how does our cash on hand increase and to stay to what we need to are projected to be at the minimum amount that we should have?
well, a lot of that decrease in revenue comes with a decrease in expense too.
Yeah, purchase power will be
Yeah.
decreasing
Okay,
By a
in the
similar
coming
amount.
months because Bell River Right.
Okay.
Bell River in January of 2018, we're gonna save roughly $40,000 in debt service payments a month. So our expenses are coming down as well. And
So of